This is Kenny from Kenny's Audiophile Record Reviews. Thank you very much for viewing my video. As always, please like and subscribe. I sincerely appreciate that. In this video, I'm going to review two Blue Note Tone Poet series records. Both I think you should definitely check out. In my opinion, they're worth the time and effort to check out the sound and the performance of those two records. And the third review in this video is going to be a jazz record on ECM Records, another album I think you should definitely check out. But I'm going to start with this album by Lee Morgan called, I believe you pronounce it, Taru. This album was recorded in 1968, but was not released until 1980 for some reason. This is a Blue Note Tone Poet series reissue of the record. This reissue was issued in 2024. This was mastered by Kevin Gray at Coherent Audio. Reissue supervised by Joe Harley. Recorded by Rudy Van Gelder. I'll show you the cover and inside the gatefold before I get to the artist. The back of the cover. And I always say the inside of these Tone Poet series records are just sensational. The photographs and the artwork on the inside of the gatefold. For this particular record is Lee Morgan on trumpet, Benny Maupin tenor sax, George Benson guitar, John Hicks piano, Reggie Workman bass, Billy Higgins drums. And again, this album was recorded in 1968. It wasn't released till 1980, and I believe the cover of the 1980 version, I believe it's different from this one. If I'm incorrect, please correct me. This may have been just a Tone Poet artwork cover. But those who might be more knowledgeable about the cover, please leave your comments in the comment section below. But I'll show you the song listing as well. But on this record, Lee Morgan is situated, his trumpet is in the left speaker, with the exception of one composition. I think on Taru, the song Taru, What's Wrong With You, I think he's in the middle of the sound stage, whereas Benny Maupin is in the right speaker. George Benson, I think he only appears on two songs, I think. He's in the center of the sound stage. I'm going to have a word or two about George Benson in this review. Billy Higgins on drums in the right speaker. Reggie Workman is in the center of the sound stage. So is John Hicks on piano. This first song is called Apheta 1. I'll show you the song just in case I'm mispronouncing it. You can pronounce it better than me. And there's a very nice George Benson solo on that particular song. George Benson was tremendous on that particular song. What a nice song that is on the album. And the next song, I assume you pronounce it Haitian. Show you song 2 is simply a beautiful Lee Morgan composition, a very beautiful song. I think the only song on this album that I really was not into is one called D-Lod. It was a third song on side 1. I really wasn't into that composition, but the entirety of side 2 I thought was quite good. And the song Taru, What's Wrong With You, I think is a beautiful song as well. And the last song on side 3, I assume you pronounce it Durham. That particular song reminds me of the way the Cannonball Adderley Quintet was playing in the mid to late 60s. It has that type of vibe and groove to that very nice song, and that they're just jamming on this that particular song. Overall, I really enjoyed the performance on this record by Lee Morgan and crew. It was recorded. I had some issues with the recording. I'll get to the performance first. The performance was quite good in my opinion. I'm going to give the performance a 9 on this record. It's one that you should definitely check out. Like I said, I only was not into one song, and it was the last song on side 3. But the performance a 9. It's a solid 9. It's a very solid, nice performance by Lee Morgan. Like I said, George Benson was quite good on the first song on side 1. It just shows the awesome jazz capabilities of George Benson at that time and throughout his career, for that matter. But again, Benny Maupin was tremendous. Again, he was for the most part in the right speaker. Both Maupin and Lee Morgan really played together. And I like the separation of them instruments with the tenor sax in the right speaker and the trumpet in the left speaker. It sounded quite good. The issue I have with the sound of this record is the bass was too buried in the mix to really hear it as good as I would like to. You know, a lot of these Blue Note recordings, for some reason, the bass and the piano were not recorded as well as I think they should have compared to some other recordings on other labels. More so the bass on this record. It was just too buried in the mix. And the piano could have been recorded better too. Because of that, I'm giving the sound to 8.5. But it's a Lee Morgan performance that you should definitely check out. And again, I believe George Benson was on 2 songs. It's very worth checking out, listening to. You might want to seek it out on YouTube. But as I always say in my videos, because of copyright infringement issues, I don't want my video to be taken down. So I'm playing music on my channel. I know others do. I'm not taking a risk. But check that album out on YouTube. It's very worth the investment in time. And the next one is really worth the investment in time. The next record I'm going to present in this video is a highly underrated jazz record, in my opinion. And this too had a delayed release. This Andrew Hill Passing Ships album. This album, gosh, I think it was recorded in 1969, but it was not released until 2003, if I recall. Again, this is a Tone Poet issue, again mastered by Kevin Gray. This one was released in 2021, I believe. Originally recorded by Rudy Van Gelder at the Van Gelder Studios. Show you this one. Again, the cover. And inside, the back cover. And this album is no exception when it comes to the inside of the gatefold. There's a beautiful inside of the gatefold. You have a picture of Joe Farrell and Andrew Hill, Ron Carter. This album features Woody Shaw, Dizzy Reese on trumpet, Julian Priester on trombone, Bob Northern, French horn, Howard Johnson, tuba, bass clarinet. Joe Farrell was busy on this record. Joe Farrell played soprano sax, tenor sax, alto flute, bass clarinet, English horn. They maximized his potential and awesome talent on this record. Joe Farrell was awesome on this record. Andrew Hill, piano. Ron Carter bass, a great Ron Carter bass, and a young Lenny White drums. This was recorded in 1969. The same year, I believe, Lenny White was involved in Miles Davis's Bitches Brew album. But this album is simply a great jazz. If you're into like acoustic jazz, go no further than this album. This is an underrated jazz album with great performances by Andrew Hill, but especially the horn section. If you're into jazz and great horn sections, this album has a great horn section. Joe Farrell was absolutely tremendous on this recording, in my opinion. He was, and also Lenny White. Lenny White was in the right speaker, if I recall. Andrew Hill, I think he was around the center of the soundstage, and so was Joe Farrell. I think he was around the center of the soundstage. But there's a song on here called Plantation Bag. And Joe Farrell and Lenny White are jamming on that song, where Lenny White is keeping the time along with the bass spectacularly. And Joe Farrell, he's just jamming on that song, Plantation Bag. I believe that's the name of the song. And then two great songs on here also are Passing Ships and Brown Queen. But overall, this jazz album has spectacular balance, great performances, a great concept. By the way, this is a 2 LP set, if I failed to mention that. It's 2 records in the set. So it was a very, ambitious undertaking by Hill and crew on this record to keep that quality of the music up. A lot of these 2-record sets, they suffer when they go to the, the second album. It gets thin. But this one, there's no drop in quality of the songs on this album. When you go from album 1 to album 2, it's very balanced, great songs and compositions on both records. Andrew Hill, Passing Ships. I'm going to give the performance a 9.5. This performance is quite good in terms of an acoustic jazz record for that time, or any time, as a matter of fact. This is an underrated record, in my opinion. Andrew Hill, Passing Ships. Again, the performance is 9.5. The sound, however, the bass, at least on my setup, and I was using a Rega P8 turntable with a Apheta 3 cartridge, the bass was, at times, not always during the 2 records, was very deep at some points, and Andrew Hill's piano could have been more pristine and more present and more crystal clear, in my opinion. So the sound, I'm going to give an 8.5. But this is record, Passing Ships by Andrew Hill. Again, recorded in 1969, but it was not released until, I think, 2003. Reissued on Tone Poets. This is a Tone Poet reissue series. Is one album you should definitely check out. There's just no doubt about it. That's a tremendous jazz album if you're into real jazz. Andrew Hill, Passing Ships. Check it out. And the last review is on the ECM label. One of my viewers mentioned this record in the comment section as of the recording date of this video, like a day or two ago. And he mentioned, by the way, this Keith Jarrett, and the name of the album is Belonging. This album was issued in 1974 on ECM Records. I will show you the label. And he mentioned that Bradford Marsalis is doing his version of this record. So it's a record, Bradford Marsalis' version of this record is a record I think I should get at some point. Because I was really entertained by the Keith Jarrett original version that was issued in 1974 on ECM Records. I will show you the musicians on this record. Right here. And this album, I'll show you the song listing too. Also, at the end of this video, I'm going to talk about a very important point or topic about this album. Keith Jarrett sued a famous band about copyright issues in terms of the usage of his music. I'll do that at the end of this review. But this album is what I like to hear in a jazz album, because if I recall, Keith Jarrett was in the right speaker. The bass was in the left speaker, and the saxophone play was in between the center of the sound stage and left speaker, if I recall. The instruments were separated, so you could point to instruments in a 3-dimensional sound space if your system was set up properly. And I like to listen to music that way in terms of, instead of, like, for example, some of those Blue Note records that I just mentioned in this review, oftentimes you'll have like the piano and bass and another instrument in the exact same area. I like to have them separated so you can hear the enjoyment and hear the separation and detail of the instruments better when they're separated that way, instead of they're all occupying the same space. This album was recorded very well, performed exceptionally well, in my opinion. There's a song called Blossom. Again, I'll show you this song listing again. There's a very nice performance by Keith Jarrett and crew, and I really love how you can hear the detail, detail of the saxophones, the saxes, and the detail of the bass in the left speaker. You know, you just hear the pristineness and the beauty of that beautiful instrument when it was separated and it was well recorded. Where some of these other recordings, the piano and the bass get buried in the mix. This album is one you should definitely check out. I'm interested in the Bradford Marsalis version on this record. I plan to get it at some point. So that is definitely on my list to get. Somewhere down the line I can do a comparison. But it's a very, very beautiful and nice jazz performance by Keith Jarrett and crew. You definitely check out. It sounds great, performed great as well. I'm going to give the sound a 9.5. It sounds, like I said, it sounds exceptional. And the sound a 9.5 as well, because, yeah, like I said, it was the separation and the way it was recorded. You can hear the beauty and texture and genuineness, if that's a word, of all the instruments on this great album by Keith Jarrett. Keith Jarrett, Belonging. Now, the issue I want to talk about this record, Keith Jarrett sued Steely Dan because their album, Gaucho, this is a UHQR version of Gaucho, by the way. And the song Gaucho, I believe that was a song. Keith Jarrett claimed that the band Steely Dan used the song on here, Long As You Know You're Living Yours. They used portions or something very similar from Keith Jarrett's song on the Steely Dan song Gaucho. And Keith Jarrett sued for copyright infringement or unfair use of his material. And he won that lawsuit and he got added as co-author on that song. I believe it's Gaucho. But that's a side note to this great record. Keith Jarrett, Belonging. Sound a 9.5, performance a 9.5. Those are my review. Oh, by the way, this is not part of the review on this album. This is a Blue Note album, but it's not part of this. You know, I get part of this video. This is Soul Station. Hank Mobley. If you have any of those albums, please leave your comments in the comment section below. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe. I really appreciate that as well. Thank you much for viewing. God bless, strong love, and more important than these record reviews, more important than music, please keep the peace worldwide.